Welcome back to Family Recipes with Amanda. I've decided to make a savory dish with you today. These are my stuffed mushrooms. I make them every Thanksgiving for my family as an appetizer while we wait for the turkey to get done. Everybody's snacky. It keeps, busy hands out of the kitchen so that you can get all the trimmings made for the turkey. They're great for a New Year's Eve party. They're great for a Super Bowl party. They're great for just a dinner party with friends. Just a lovely appetizer. Who doesn't love stuffed mushrooms? Well, probably not your kids, but that's okay. More for you. Okay, so we're going to get started with Amanda's stuffed mushrooms. Okay, I have all my ingredients here. So we're going to start with the star ingredient, the mushrooms. These are just regular store-bought white mushrooms. And you always want to make sure that you sort of clean off your mushrooms with a paper towel when you buy them. You don't put them in water, don't soak them. That makes them rubbery and not as tasty. So you're just looking for dirt. So I'm just going to go through here. These look pretty clean, actually. Depends on where you get them from, how much dirt is on them. So these. And I always try to look for a good size mushroom as well, because we are going to be stuffing them, right? So we want a good size bite, which it isn't always easy to find. Sometimes they're smaller, sometimes they're bigger. I don't know. It is late summer right now, so I'm thinking that these are a good size maybe because it's mushroom season, as it's been pretty rainy lately here. Not really sure. If you have a farmer's market nearby, this is probably a really great time to buy them there. And sometimes the ones at the farmer's market are really nice and big, bigger than what you can get at the grocery store. So anyway, those are all clean. So this is just one. I'm just making one box, one 12-ounce box of mushrooms. And so the easy thing to do is we're just gonna sort of wiggle the stems out so I have a nice hole in the center. And that's what we're going to do. So what we're going to do with our stems, and we try to do it gently because you don't want to break that membrane of the mushroom. We want a nice cavity in there that we can fill. So I'm trying not to break the stem off inside. If I do, I can just like that, reach in and pull out the little extra. Okay. Oops, got them mixed up in order there. So what we're going to do after this is we're going to chop up those stems, and we're going to saute them with green onions and with garlic and Westchester sauce. That's for my mother-in-law. It's another story altogether. So almost done here. Just takes a few moments. And then the mushrooms just kind of sit there for quite a long time until we're ready to stuff them. That'll be a while. So you just let them sit there in a bowl or a plate. All right, so we're going to chop these up pretty fine because nobody wants a big old bite of stem. Of course, the stems are a little bit tougher, a little woodier than the actual mushroom cap. So we want them to be fine. We're going to saute them up, and that way they'll soak up more butter and more sour cream, and they'll be more tender as we go. So I'm just taking a couple at a time. I kind of line them up. I'm chopping them into little discs to start with. And then when I get all the way through all of them, I'll go back through and I'll show you how to chop them up finer, more fine. I'm an English teacher. I should know which one I'm supposed to use. They both sound right, so you'll forgive me. All right. So just be careful with your fingers, right? Of course, the best way to be safe with your knives is to have a really sharp knife. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but it's not. A dull knife will move around on you. It'll slip and so forth. But a sharp knife will stay where you put it. It'll cut right through. It's when the knife starts moving around that you have problems. Okay, so you see what I'm doing here with my knife? I'm moving it in, I'm keeping the tip of the blade down, and then I'm moving the back end up and down like this. So I'm kind of rocking the knife through these mushrooms. And I'm going in the kind of the opposite direction of what I did before. So I had all those discs and then I just kind of lined them up in a pile. And I'm just going to go over them a couple of times, like so, until they're all pretty fine. And then you can turn your knife 90 degrees and go the other way. You can see how I'm holding the front end of the knife down with my hand. That helps me get better control of the knife. Also keeps my fingers out of the way. And I'm chopping. I'm almost there, but not quite. And you know, the piles move around on you. And so you can just scrape it back together and target some of the bigger pieces as you see them. Don't want too big of a piece in there. You want them all to be kind of even and fine. All right, I think that's pretty good. Pretty good. Probably not winning any culinary awards with my knife skills, but I don't know. I think it's all right. All right, so I'm just going to scoop those up and put them in my bowl to hang out and wait. And then we'll move on to the next ingredient. All right. So, all right. And I tried to work really hard. When you're doing a recipe, I always think it's a good idea to read through it once first, and then line up all your ingredients, get out all your measuring tools, get out all your spoons and your knives and everything you need, so you're not sort of scrambling mid-step like, oh no, I forgot to X, Y, and Z. Now I always forget something anyways, but I don't know. You just try to help yourself be organized. All right. So the next ingredient is green onions. Now these are green onions straight out of my garden. So it asks for a 1/4 cup of green onions chopped. Now you'll notice, like if you buy green onions at the store, they'll have the white bulb on the end with the little roots hanging off of them. And that's fine. You can absolutely do store-bought, and just make sure you cut off that white part and then chop up the rest of these. We just want the stems. We don't want the white bulb or root part of that. And of course, since these came from my garden, I would really like to keep the root part in my garden so I can have more green onions later on and next year and so on and so forth. So these are all washed and clean out of my garden. And what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of trying to line them up. Whenever I'm cutting something, I like to line it up so that the ends are all together, and that helps me, you know, to chop more, I don't know what the word I want is, you know, so without wasting my time, more economically. That's the word I wanted. All right, so here's what I'm doing. I'm holding the onions in their little bunch here, about an inch away from where my knife is. And then I'm going to do that similar rocking motion that we did before. It's kind of hard because the knife is backwards. So I'm cutting little tiny, you know, just infinitesimal movements of the knife. I'm slowly just inching my way. And then I'm sort of peeling my fingers back like this from the knife as I go. Okay, so keep your fingers. Now I guess, you know, culinary school, they would teach you to tuck your fingers under so that you don't have your little fingernails sticking out, or your tips of your fingers. So we're just cutting little tiny fine green onions down, down, down. Now, well, you know, I asked my husband to go out and cut these onions for me. I said, it's no use telling him that I need a 1/4 cup, right? He doesn't know what that is. And frankly, neither do I. So I just estimated, this is a bunch. It's probably about that big, about the size of a 1/4. And I think it's actually going to be more than a 1/4 cup. But kind of the beauty part about cooking versus baking is that you really don't need to measure things. It's kind of to taste, and you know, if I think I have enough, great. If If I want to add more, that's great too, and so on. So I'm getting down to the end, the stringier, thinner parts of my green onion. Okay, so it's a little harder to control and keep together. I have well over 1/4 cup here. I'm kind of a completist, so I'm just going to complete it. And hey, if this is more than I need, I can just save these in a little Tupperware for the future. You know, that's the great thing about herbs. I can throw these in a salad, in a stir fry, on some chili, on a baked potato, you know, anywhere you might like to put chives, basically. That's what these are. Okay, so just for you, I'm gonna measure these so we can see how much that 1/4 size piece actually was. So I have a little glass bowl here, which I love these bowls. Okay, here's my little plug, which again, I do not get paid for, but boy, wouldn't I love to. These are Pampered Chef bowls, and I use them for a variety of tools. You know, they're great for desserts, puddings, jellos, ice cream, etc. But they also have these really super awesome, I don't know if you can see it, it's so close. Yeah, I don't think you can. They have markings here. If I got real close, could you see? No. Anyway, that marks the amount. And so this is just a little bit over a 1/4 cup. So into the prep bowl it goes. Oh, so in addition to using these for desserts, I can also use them as measuring or prep bowls for when I'm cooking, like this. If I had a whole bunch of spices and herbs, I would put them in there. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. I have my mushrooms and onions in a bowl, and I've got my garlic right here. Big old jar of pre-minced garlic. This is the best thing ever. So, you know, I just buy this and stick it in my fridge, and I always have fresh garlic for cooking with, which is awesome. And you don't have to, I mean, I have a garlic press and I can cut garlic by hand, but who wants to do that when you can just take a tablespoon and dip out what you need? And then I have some Worcestershire sauce. All right, I'll have to explain because I've said it twice now. So, you know, this is the hardest word on the planet to say is Worcestershire. And some people say Worcestershire and whatever. My mother-in-law just calls it Westchester sauce, which is super easy to say. So that's kind of our little shorthand that we use. All right, so I'm going to take all this. I'm going to take it over to my stove. So I'm going to take all this, my garlic, my Worcestershire sauce, my mushrooms, my green onions, and I'm going to take it over to the stove and I'm going to saute it with some butter and olive oil. So I'll meet you over at the stove. Okay, now we're over here at the stove. I've already got my oven preheated to 350 degrees for the mushrooms. And now I'm just going to add in a tablespoon of butter. This is just my soft butter that I keep out for toast and whatever. And a tablespoon is really just by eye, right? So this is about a tablespoon right there, about a 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch. And then some olive oil. And again, I think it calls for a 1.5 tablespoons of olive oil. I absolutely never measure olive oil. So I just pour in, you know, a little bit, 3 seconds worth, or it looks like about, you know, a $1/2 piece in the pan. And my pan is already warm. So I'm just going to swirl those around in the pan until that butter is all melted. All melted. It doesn't take very long. I want it to be nice and hot. Okay, and then it's on medium-high heat, I would say. And I'm going to pour in my mushrooms and my onions. And sort of spread those around, maybe turn it down even to low for just a second. All right, and I need a dash of Worcestershire sauce. So what's a dash? That's a dash, right? Just a little tiny bit. Worcestershire sauce is incredibly salty, if you don't know, but it's also got a lot of great umami flavors. So, you know, it's very savory, it's very fragrant, it's got a little garlic in there. I don't know what else is in there. kind of like soy sauce. So I've got to put about 1.5 tablespoons of garlic, fresh minced garlic in there. So some of you might be wondering, can I use dry garlic with this? And of course the answer is yes, you can. So I would guess that I would do about 1 teaspoon of powdered or dried garlic in there, as opposed to 1.5 tablespoons, because obviously when it's dried and powdered, it's a lot more flavor concentrated. So really, now I'm going to turn this back up now that I can pay attention to it. All we're doing now is just sitting here and stirring until those onions are cooked and the garlic is brown and the mushrooms are browned. So that takes, I don't know, 5 minutes. We could time it. So I'm just going to get these sauteed up, and I really don't mess with them too much, okay? Yeah, because that way, like when I let them sit there, they're getting browned on the bottom, and then I'll stir them around a little bit and they'll get browned on it on the other side, and maybe one more time. Just watch your garlic. Garlic has a tendency to burn. It's going to burn faster than the mushrooms and so on. But I don't need to stir the entire time. Just every 30 seconds or so. And then I want to spread it back out in the pan so it's a nice even layer, so it all cooks evenly too. We don't want clumps in the pan. All right, so I'm just going to keep doing that until it's done, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, I just wanted to give you a little gander what the mushrooms look like when they're done. They are nice and golden brown, and I can see my green onions are getting a little dark, so it's time to be done. The great thing is the mushrooms are going to soak up all that butter and olive oil, right? And so when your pan starts to get a little too dry, that's kind of when you know you're done. So now we have to let them cool. So I'm just going to take them out of the pan because the pan is hot and it will continue to cook, and I do not want them to continue to cook. I don't want to burn my garlic at all. And this mixture has to cool for a little while. So while it's not very long, just so you can touch it, just till it's room temperature, okay? And so I'm going to go and prepare the pan and prepare the rest of the filling for the mushrooms. I'll meet you back over on the other side. Okay, I just wanted to give you a little gander what the mushrooms look like when they're done. They are nice and golden brown, and I can see my green onions are getting a little dark, so it's time to be done. The great thing is the mushrooms are going to soak up all that butter and olive oil, right? And so when your pan starts to get a little too dry, that's kind of when you know you're done. So now we have to let them cool. So I'm just going to take them out of the pan because the pan is hot and it will continue to cook, and I do not want them to continue to cook. I don't want to burn my garlic at all. And this mixture has to cool for a little while. So while it's not very long, just so you can touch it, just till it's room temperature, okay? And so I'm going to go and prepare the pan and prepare the rest of the filling for the mushrooms. I'll meet you back over on the other side. Okay, so now we're going to prepare the pan and we're going to prepare the filling for the mushrooms. So I really just need a cookie sheet. This is just a regular old, it's kind of big, but a cookie sheet. And I normally do like a double or triple batch of these mushrooms, okay? So this is probably a little big for what I've got today, but that's okay. And all I've done is just grease it. I chose to use just regular cooking spray to grease it today. And it's just sitting there, and that's so the mushrooms don't stick while they bake. Okay, I've got to go into our filling. I've got a package of 8-ounce package of cream cheese. Salt, pepper, cayenne pepper, a little dash of cayenne pepper. I've got some Parmesan cheese. The recipe actually asks for 1/2 cup of Parmesan cheese. I don't have 1/2 cup of Parmesan cheese right now in my house. So look, here's one of my bowls with the lid again. It's just holding the last of the Parmesan cheese that was in my house. So anyway, so today because it's what I have, I had to choose what I want for the rest of the cheese in here, and I happen to have some leftover gorgonzola. So I think gorgonzola goes brilliantly with mushrooms, and it goes really well, and it's very creamy in texture, so it's going to sort of melt in like the cream cheese. I think it's going to work great. And then I have some breadcrumbs. Now, you might want to use Italian breadcrumbs. These are plain, and if that's all you have, that's fine. You can always doctor up your plain breadcrumbs with some Italian seasoning. Boom, you got Italian breadcrumbs. Okay, so our pan is prepared, and now we're going to take all these ingredients, we're going to mix them up, and then when the mushrooms and the onions are cool, we're going to put them back together again. Okay. So I'm going to start with my cream cheese. Now this cream cheese is at room temperature. I got it out when I started this whole procedure of cooking and getting the mushrooms ready because I needed it to be soft enough to spread at room temperature. So all I'm going to do is put it in the bowl and just mash it around a little bit, just so it's a little softer, a little more workable. Okay, it doesn't have to be very much. Just enough to make it spreadable. Like, you don't need to whip it. You don't need, you don't need mixers or anything like that. All right, that's it. Just beat it up a little bit. All right, there's no particular order for anything. So here I have, it's actually even less than a quarter cup of Parmesan cheese, and I need a half a cup of Parmesan cheese. So I'm just going to put that in there, and I'm going to put, let's see how much I have here. It's a 5-ounce jar, so yeah, I'm just going to put, about 3 ounces of the gorgonzola in there. It's totally going to be a different flavor, but like I said, gorgonzola goes beautifully with mushrooms anyways, so I might as well. Okay, and then I'm going to take and do black pepper. Now, black pepper is another thing I really never ever measure out, right? Make sure if you're using a lid that you don't have the big open wide side out, right? Make sure that you have the shaker side open. I've done that before. So I'm just going to shake a decent amount in there. It says a half a teaspoon. I'm just kind of eyeballing it. I don't want the whole surface to be covered in black or anything like that. And then, again, salt, pepper, stuff like that, I don't really measure, but I'll show you what I do. So this is just fine sea salt, and I don't want to get out the teaspoon and measure it out. So I'm going to take it in my cupped palm, and I'm going to pour out, which is about I'm going to take and pour out about a dime size of the sea salt. Okay, so about a dime is about a teaspoon. Again, remember that with cooking, you really don't have to be all that precise. It's about how much salt, how much peppers you want in there. And then, now, here's the exception to the rule. Cayenne pepper. I will 100% measure cayenne pepper every time. Why, you might ask? Well, it's very spicy, of course. And if you don't measure it, you could end up with something that's way too spicy and unpleasant. So I do always measure the cayenne pepper. So I need a half a teaspoon of cayenne pepper. And as always, we do not want a rounded teaspoon. We want a flat teaspoon. Okay, so it is a little spicy, but the spiciness, don't be afraid of it. It works against the cream cheese, and with the gorgonzola cheese, I think it's going to be really awesome. And then I need a cup of breadcrumbs. Remember, you need Italian breadcrumbs, but if you don't have any, that's okay. These are plain. So there's my cup of plain breadcrumbs. And here's my Italian seasoning. Boom. And I am going to put in probably about a tablespoon of Italian seasoning. I think that should be just about right. Okay, so I'm going to mix that all up together so it's nice and consistent. Of course, the breadcrumbs dry it out, right? So it's going to be a little hard to work with. I'm kind of doing these things out of order because if I wasn't doing this with you right now, I would walk away from my mushroom and onion mix that we're going to add to this until it was fully cooled down, and you know, so I might leave it for a half an hour and go do something else. But because I'm trying to do this on video and with you, I'm sort of going out of order. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of mix that together until there's no loose breadcrumbs in there. Because remember, these mushrooms have a ton of moisture in them. They have all that olive oil, all that butter. They have all the moisture from the onions. So if this mixture looks really dry, which it does right now, that's okay, because I'm about to add a whole bunch of moisture to it. So, and they're totally room temperature. They're cool to the touch, okay? Cool to the touch, no problem. So I'm just gonna add them in at this point, okay? And stir them up into a nice filling. So let's remember, what are we doing this for, right? We're stuffing mushrooms. So we want it to be a mixture that I can spoon up and push into the mushrooms. So I don't want it to be too crumbly and dry. I don't want it to be too loose and runny. I want it to be a good creamy consistency. So I'm just working all of that moisture in there. It just takes a minute to do. It smells really great. I can smell the cayenne coming up. Alrighty, almost there. I actually think that the gorgonzola is making this even creamier than normal, because Parmesan cheese. Oh, I didn't talk about the Parmesan cheese. Parmesan cheese tends to be pretty dry. So I do not use the finely grated Parmesan cheese. I like the shredded kind. And whether you buy that in the cheese section or whether you use the more dried version of it that's available on the grocery shelves, I just like the flavor better. And the best flavor, in my personal opinion, is when you freshly shred the Parmesan cheese yourself. You just get yourself a block, a triangle of Parmesan cheese, and shred it as you need it. That's really the best way. But, you know, it's also kind of a pain if every time you want a little tablespoon of Parmesan cheese, you got to go grate the thing. So, you know, we take shortcuts, right? Okay, that's looking really good. So here we go. I'm going to now take my teaspoon and I'm going to fill my mushroom caps. I'll start with kind of a bigger one. Okay, so nice good size middle in there. I'm taking about a teaspoon worth of filling, and I'm just gonna kind of lay it in there. And you can see it's a little bit like the consistency of Play-Doh. I can mold it in there. It's gonna hold its shape. It's not falling out, kind of shaky. It's not falling out. I can pile this as high as I want, right? And I'm not gonna pile these too high, and I'll tell you why in a few minutes, okay? So I'm just gonna fill all these up. So a teaspoon, you know, to get a good teaspoon, you just press it up against the side of the bowl. You got a good teaspoon there. All right, let me do one of the smaller ones because, you know, they're not factory made, they're mushrooms, right? So I'm just gonna press that in there. So you can see it's a smaller mushroom. It's gonna hold less filling. That's fine, nothing wrong with that. And I just kind of mold it into a nice rounded top, okay? So I've got 14 mushrooms, not very many. I'm gonna fill them all up, and then I'm gonna show you what to do after that. So, okay, so here's the deal. My mushrooms are all ready to go. They're full, they're rounded tops. Yeah, they do tend to wobble around. Sorry about that. Okay, so they look good, right? Great, swell. Here's the deal. Look at all the filling I have left over. No, you haven't done anything wrong. Let's just think about this, right? We took out a little tiny mushroom stem and we filled it with like a whole bunch of cream cheese and onions and everything else. Of course, there's going to be some left over. So what do? Haha, we have 2 appetizers for the price of 1. Here's what we're going to do. I have a little casserole dish here. I'm going to spray it with my cooking spray all the way around. Okay. And I'm going to take all that glorious goodness of mushroom dip filling, and I'm going to put it in here, pack it in, spread it down flat. Let me show you how to do that, right? So I'm just going to press it in. I'll just use my fingers. It's easier. Okay. And this is a gorgeous, gorgeous mushroom dip. So we're going to bake this up at the same time as the mushrooms. And then when it's done, you just take some crackers, some Ritz crackers, or, you know, whatever kind of crackers you like, maybe some Triscuits, I don't know. And you've got a dip and you've got mushrooms. Yeah, it's the same filling, it's the same flavor. So the same people who don't like mushrooms aren't going to like this either. But the people who do like mushrooms, it can have it 2 ways. All right, so we're putting it in the oven, which is set at 350 degrees for 20 to 25 minutes. And because my tray is so large, actually, look at this. I can even put it right on the same tray right in the oven. Okay, so when you put your mushrooms in the oven, remember I said they wobble around a little bit. Some of them might knock over. So carefully, depending on how cautious you are in your oven, carefully, if they fall over when you're sticking them in and they wobble off to the side, just reach in, straighten them out, put them in the way they go, and just close the door and walk away. It'll be fine. Okay, don't leave them knocked on their side, because then all that filling is gonna, as the cheese melts, it's gonna like run out onto your pan, which you don't want. You want it to be in that mushroom. And remember, the mushrooms are like little sponges. They're gonna soak up all that cheese, and it's gonna, infuse the flavor of the whole mushroom. So I'll see you in 20 to 25 minutes when the mushrooms are done and out and hot. And so here we have a lovely appetizer spread that you could have for an afternoon with friends, a dinner party, a family gathering of any kind. So I've got my stuffed mushrooms that came out of the oven. And you can see the mushrooms did shrink up a little. They're going to do that. And there's tons of filling coming out the top, and they look so pretty and cute on this little platter. And I've got my leftover mushroom filling here. It's a little hot still. And I've got a spoon in there, so I can just take a bit and spoon it onto my cracker. And then I've got a nice little appetizer there. And then I've just got a plate of fresh vegetables, which is always good to have a veggie tray. So we'll have our moment of truth now. And I'll take one of these gorgeous little mushrooms and pop it into my mouth. What I love about these is they're just like a 1 or 2 bite appetizer, which is perfect for anybody, which is why you need to make like 2 or 3 times this batch. They go fast. All right, bon appetit. I'm trying to see if I can taste the gorgonzola in there. Nice heat coming through from the cayenne pepper, super creamy. And, I don't really notice a difference too much. It's probably a little less sharp, actually, than when I normally have the full Parmesan cheese in there. So I hope you like it. Let me know if you have any trouble with it. Bon appetit. Have a great day.